Hundreds of children, teenagers asleep in their dorms, were snatched in the dead of night by armed gunmen. More than 300 students and a dozen teachers from a Catholic boarding school in northern Nigeria vanished without warning. Families are now begging for answers. The government is scrambling to respond, and the country is reeling under a horror that feels like it should belong to a war zone, not a school. In this video, we're going to dive into the shocking events that unfolded at St. Mary's Catholic School in Niger State. We'll talk about what happened, why it's part of a bigger problem, and what people inside and outside Nigeria are saying, including global reactions and what this means for the future. But most importantly, we'll ask, how can Nigeria stop this from happening again? Imagine it's just past midnight in a quiet rural town in Niger State. At St. Mary's Catholic boarding school in Papiri, students are asleep in their dormitories. In the early hours of November 21st, 2025, armed gunmen storm into the school compound. In a horrifying turn of events, hundreds of children and several teachers are kidnapped. This is not just one isolated incident. It's part of a growing national crisis. According to the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, a total of 303 students and 12 teachers were abducted during that raid, making up 315 people in all, after a full census. Reports say 88 students had tried to run away during the attack, but were captured. Families later learned about the full number only after CAN conducted a verification. The raid reportedly took place between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., according to the Catholic Diocese of Kontagora. A security guard was shot during the kidnapping. Satellite images show the school is large, more than 50 buildings, including classrooms, dorms, and admin blocks, making it a difficult place to defend. Panic broke out across the community when the news spread. Some families immediately rushed to the school compound. A 62-year-old grandfather named Dauda Chekula told journalists that several of his grandchildren, aged between 7 and 10, were among those taken. The Christian Association of Nigeria said they had begun rescue operations. Security forces, including military units, police tactical teams, and local hunters, were deployed to nearby forests, searching for possible hideouts of the kidnappers. Then came a glimmer of hope. On November 23rd, CAN announced that 50 of the kidnapped children had escaped and reunited with their families. But the relief was bittersweet. 253 children and 12 staff members reportedly remained in captivity, and no confirmed communication had been made public by the abductors. In response to the crisis, the governor of Niger State, Mohammed Amarabago, ordered all schools in the state to shut down immediately. This drastic move was meant as a precaution to prevent further kidnappings, especially since boarding schools are seen as vulnerable targets. Other states in the region have also begun re-evaluating school security. Meanwhile, the Catholic Diocese of Kontagora demanded answers. They insisted they had not received any official warning before the raid, rejecting claims that a circular to close the school had been issued earlier. The diocese called on parents and the wider community to stay calm, but remain vigilant, while actively coordinating with security agencies, traditional leaders, and government authorities. To understand why this ordeal happened, we need to look at a much bigger picture. This was not the first time a school in Nigeria has been attacked. In fact, criminal networks known locally as bandits have made mass abductions part of their business strategy. These are not always ideological or terrorist groups. Many simply kidnap for ransom. They have realized that abducting entire student bodies brings in far more money than smaller operations. Experts argue that these kidnappers are running a calculated kidnap economy. Part of the vulnerability comes from the condition of many schools in high-risk regions. Data from recent reports show that only about 37% of schools in the 10 most vulnerable states have early warning systems that could alert students and staff to danger soon enough to respond. That means many children sleep through the night in dorms with no alarm, no security communication, and no system to call for help when trouble arrives. Compounding the danger is the fact that recent kidnappings have grown in frequency. Just days before the Papiri abduction, 25 girls were kidnapped from a boarding school in Kebbi State, and in Kwara State, gunmen attacked a church, taking worshippers hostage. The timing and coordination suggest that these may not be random incidents, but part of a broader, strategic wave of criminal violence. No group has publicly claimed responsibility for the Papiri kidnapping, which only deepens the mystery. This lack of claim could mean different things. It could simply be organized crime, or it could hint at deeper political or religious factors. But based on the evidence available, many analysts lean toward the idea that this is driven by organized criminals seeking ransom, not terrorists with a political ideology. On the global stage, the situation has reignited international concern. Pope Leo made a moving appeal on November 23rd, calling for the children and teachers' prompt release, urging Nigerian authorities to act decisively.
I was deeply saddened to learn of the kidnappings of priests, faithful, and students in Nigeria and Cameroon.
Church leaders in Nigeria, especially from the Catholic Diocese, say they are working closely with community leaders and security operatives to secure a safe return for the captives. For the parents, this is more than just tragedy. It's a wrenching emotional ordeal. Some have fled to temporary shelters, haunted by fear and uncertainty. Others cling to hope, waiting for news, praying for signs of life. The psychological toll is enormous. For many, every minute feels like an eternity, every silence a potential disaster. This kidnapping crisis is also a major test of Nigeria's security apparatus. The question now is clear. Can the government coordinate an effective rescue without causing harm? Can they build long-term protections for schools so that boarding institutions don't remain perpetually under threat? And, perhaps most importantly, can they dismantle the lucrative kidnapping networks that see Nigeria's children as sources of ransom? If the status quo persists, the implications are dire. Parents may stop sending their children to boarding schools, enrollment may plummet, and children's education could suffer massively. Worse, kidnapping could become an increasingly normalized instrument of crime, an ugly part of daily life in certain states. At this moment of crisis, urgent action is needed. First, schools in high-risk areas must be equipped with reliable early warning systems. Second, there must be better cooperation between local communities and security agencies. Trust and intelligence sharing must increase. Third, rescue operations must prioritize saving lives, not just paying ransoms. Excessive payments only feed the cycle. And finally, international solidarity must translate into support. People across the world must demand real reform and commitment from Nigerian leaders. These are not just news headlines. These are children's lives, teachers' lives, and whole families shattered by fear. We must push for change, demand accountability, and make sure school is once again a place for learning, not a battleground.